Introduction about yourself. Introduction about yourself. My name is Vanshika Mams. I'm the postgraduate of MA Political Science. And I do preparation for. Hello everyone, we have to discuss about that English grammar basic introductions. And what is the grammar? Here in old children's and rhymes and about the 8 part in speech of the English grammars, and it is give you and the ideas of the what grammar is about. Read and the remembers it. Every name is called the noun and as the feed and the fountains. Street and town and in place of the nouns and the pronouns standard and he is he and she can the clap their hand and objective describe a thing. A magic word or the bridal ring can most the verb and means the action something done. To read and write to the jump and runs and how things are the done by the adverbs. Noun. Noun are divided into common numbers and the proper nouns. Commons are words for the pupils and animals, places or things. Chapter number 1, Language and Meanings. A functional grammar aims to the match and form to the functions and meanings in context, and this units and introduce and 3 standard of the meaning, and that forms the basic of a functional interpretations of grammars and the representationals and the interpersonals, the textuals, and each of thus the stands and is the encoded in the clause and or the simple sentence as a type of the structures. The 3 structures are the mapped on to one another's and the illustration how the 3 type of the meaning and combines in once the linguistics and expressions communications act. Let us start and from the basics and concept, and that the language is for the communication, and here is other part of other record and conversations taken from other sociological project of the universities of Bristol, and the speakers are the Janik the girls and who runs are the youth clubs and disco and is and the English towns and cherries. One of the boy in the club and who is 19th and work in the shop and in the dialogues. We can discussing and various types of the communication act or the speeches and act by which people communicated and with each others and making the statement, asking questions and giving the directive with the aims of the getting the harders and to the carry out some actions, making and the offers of promise or promise and thinkings and expressions and the exclamations. Offer, if you like and I come into your the shop tomorrows and get some the more models aeroplanes kit. Reminders, okay, don't forget to bribe the bills and with you this times. Promise, I want J questions. Do you enjoy working here? Statement C, it is all right and I suppose get other bit and draw borings. It will do for other while. And statement, I would have thought you were good at the selling thinking. And statement C, I don't know that what to do really and I have had others the jobs and my dad keeps on at me and to go into his buses and he the keeps and offering me better babes exclamations. But the last things and to do is to the works and for him and questions by eco questions and why you don't and now my old man I exclamations and wouldn't and work for him and he always statement wanted me to and but we don't go on get on. Question D. Have you think it is possible and to get me on other part-time youth leadership schools offers and promises? I will rings up and tomorrows and cherries and find out for you. Thinking. Thanks a lot. In a communicatives and exchange and such as this and between to the speakers and the kind of meanings and encoded is the questions and statement offers reminders and thanks is the interpersonal meaning and asking and the statings are basic communicatives and act and the things and ask for or the state is maybe something linguistics and such as the information or and the opinion and do you the enjoy working here bunking there and it is all right and I suppose and or it may be the somethings and non the linguistics and some types of goods and services such as the handlings and over the aeroplane kits. This non-linguistic exchange may be the verbalized and by for instance and here you are and but it need not be typically and however and when goods and the services are exchanged and verbal interactions take place to and for the instance and asking other favors and do you think and it is possible to get me or other part times youth leadership course and or giving other promise and I will ring up tomorrow cherries and find out for you and are the carried out verbally the grammatically forms and that the encode and to the basic types of the interpersonals and communications stating and questions and are the illustrations in section 1 3 2 and the whole areas is the dealt with more the fully in chapter 4 the content of communication every speech and act and whether the spoken and or the writers and taken place in other social context other telephone conversations and writing other letters buying a newspaper giving or the attending other lectures and are all the contact and within which the different speech and act are the carried out such contact have to do and with with our ovens and or the someone's experiences of life the word at the largest that is the doing and happening in which we are the involved and or which affected us any happenings or state in real time real life or in and the any imaginaries and word of the mind and can be the expressed and in expressed through language as other situation or state of affairs and used in this way the term situation or state of affairs and do not refers directly and to and the extra linguistics realities and that the exist in the real work and but rather to the speaker and conceptualizations and of it the component of this the conceptualizations and of reality are the semantics role or functionals and may be the described in very the general terms as follow processes and that is the actions and event and state type of the behavior participated and that is the entire and of all the kinds and not only humans and but the inanimate and constraint and abstract and that are the involved in the process attribute and that is the qualities and characterize of the participant and circumstances and that is any the kind of quantity gendered and fact or the subsidiary situation and which is the associated with the process or the main situation the following example and for the text and show one the possibles and configurations and of the certain and semantics roles participant and process and circumstances figure participated and process and circumstances the kind of meaning and the express and by thus the elements of the semantics structures is representations and meanings or meaning that have to do and with the contact of the messages and the various type of process and participated attributed and the circumstances are the outline in the following sections and described more fully in chapter 5 three ways of the interpreting clause structures and the clause of the simple sentence is the basic unit and that the embodies our the constructure of the representationals and meanings and the interpersonal meanings the cloud is also the unit and whose the elements and can be the recorded in the certain ways to the facilitated and the create of the textuals and meanings and the textual resources of the clause and such as the active passive and alternative enables the representational standard and the international interpersonal stand of meaning to cohere as other message and not the simply and as other sentence in the isolations and but in the relations and toward the precedent it in the discourse and each types of the meanings is the encoded and by its the advanced structures and the three type of the structure combined to produce one single realizations in words to summarized and the three kinds of the meanings and derived from the considerations of other clause as the linguistics and representations of our the experience of the world a communications and types and exchange between the persons and the organized message or text and we now and turn to the three types of the structures and that the implement and thus meanings the cloud as the representing and situation and the transitivity and structure. The representationals and meanings of the cloud is the encoded and through the transitively and structurals and those the element of structure or the functions and include the agent and recipients and affected process and attributes and the circumstances as described in chapter 5 some of thus the make and up the semantic structure of the following example an agent process and recipients and affected and circumstances times with other process of doing and such as the actions and of the givings and the agent is there the participator and which the carries out the actions and referred and to why the verb and the recipiented is there the participated who received and the goods or information encoded is the affected and circumstances. Attending the process are the classified as the locatives and the temporals and conditionals and the concessives and casuals and resultant among the others. The clause as the interactions and mood the structure. The clause is also the major and the grammatical unit and used by the speakers to ask questions, make the statement and issues the directive unless the conservations is vary the one sides on the role of the questioners and the informant and tend to the alternate between the interlocutors. Locatives and engendered in the conversations and as can be the seen in the exchange of the speech and role between the cherries and the Jenny. Jenny's the exchange of the information is typically and carried. Yes, yes. The exchange of the information is typically carried out by the indicatives and the mood or the clouds and type and as the opposed and to the directive and which are the typically and expressed by the imperatives and mood within the indicatives and the making other statement is associated and characteristics and with the declaratives and mood and asking other question and with the interrogative. जो का अलावा जो खा लेते वो हाँ वो वालों खाता वो that in the English and carries the syntax and the burdens of the exchange the rest of the clouds and remain the unchanged. In other declaratives and the clouds the subject and the preceded the finites declared Jenny's will Jenny's or subjects will give cherries and the will and tomorrows and object adjust objects and predicate and defines. Interrogation will Jenny's give cherries the wells tomorrows and finish the subject and predicators object and object adjust. Order of the syntactic and elements in the interrogation clouds. In the interrogatives and structures, the positions of the definites and the subject are the reserve and the predicators and the rest of the clause and remainings. Remaining the same and the finite is that the element and which related the content and of the clause and to the speech event. It does this by and the referring and to the presented or the past time and through the tense and or by the expressing and the attitude of the speakers. Through the modern auxiliaries and such as will and among the other features and the introduction interrogatives. The clause as the message and the thematically structure. Here the speaker organized the information contact of the clause as to the establishment. Whatever and point of the departures is the derived the message and this is called the theme, which in English and the coincide and with the initials element or elements of the clause and the clause. But 3 4 combining the three types of the structures. The three type of the structure are the hairs map then the simultaneously into the example clause in order to show the pair tide and natures and the analysis of the English clause and four other functional point of view and the predicators objects and the adjust and are the included and as the synthetic elements or functions and with the correspondence and to the semantics roles and we examine the semantics functions and more the closely in chapter 2. Jenny agent will give process and finite plus the predications theme. In other typicals and actions declaring the clause and such as this the agent subject and theme and coincide and are the realized in one the wordings and in this the cases and the journeys and but in the natural languages use other situation can be the expressed in different ways in which the orders of the clause elements and can vary the since different element of structures can be the moved and to the initial positions over the present examples and admit at the least the following position varianted cherries will be giving the wills and by the jennies tomorrow the will and will be the giving to the cherries tomorrow by jennies and tomorrow the cherries will be the giving the bill by jennies. The motivations and for thus and the others varianted is not to be the found in the clause in the isolations and but it is the relationship to that part of the discourses and at which it is the located and the speakers and organized the content and of the clause in order to achieve the best affected for their the communicative purpose. This involved and established the point of the departures and of the clause and messages and that is theme in the relation and to the what has gone and before the this choice and condition and to the large extend the ways and the clauses and message will the developed and as be the cells and encounters instead of the passive voice in use in the fourth and coming passages and it may be the useful at this the point and to improve other brief summary of this the important options. 135 active verbs passive voice in and the active clause and the participated and that the carries out the actions and the agent is also the grammatically subject of the verb and cherries post the letters and everyday. In other corresponding passive clause the grammatically conclusions and the letter is moved in the front and the becomes the subject and while the cherries is placed as the end in other by the ferus and which is the usually optionals. The letter are the posted and every day and by the cherries. The active word and post is the replaced and by the passive words are the posted the passive verb and structurals and typically consist of other form and be and either past participations participles and the verbs which can take the passive are the transitions and verbs such as the real past or the it and which take one's object or those the such as give which take two objects the latter typically then have to the passive alternatives and by the using the passive instead and of the passive active voice in all the three and the varianted and listed above the agent and can be the omitted altogether leaving others the semantics roles to take it is the place and 20.1c and 30c. By means of such the recognition of the clause and messages the content of the clause and can be the made to the relates and to the rest of the discourses and to the communicated contact in which it is the produced and we shall now and look at the full ranges of the grammatical unit in other hierarchy and where the clause is central and we shall then and look briefly at the units and above the clouds and the complex sentence and the unit immediately and below the clouds the groups. Unit number 2 linguistics forms and the syntactic functions linguistic and categories and the relationship in the units and shall the outlines the basic syntax and concept on which our the structure analysis is based and thus the included the structural unit and which can be the arranged and by the rank the classes into which thus the units and can be the divided and the elements of which they the are the composed and we shall also the consider the base unit of one the rank are the related and to those the above or the below them and testing for the constituted and before the attempting and to see how the strength of the language and can be the broken and down into the result into units and it is the useful and to be the vowels and to the reinforces our the institutionals and as to be the wheres and boundaries and lies and this can be the done and by the applying and certain tests in order to the identify whether other particular sequence of the words in the functioning as other constituted of the higher unit or not. For instance, the following sequences in which the constitutes and the grammatically clause or the simple sentences is the ambiguous. Muriel show the men in the services stations and to the interpretations and are the possibles according to how the unit and that make up the clause and are the group into the constituted and express the grammatically as follow. Muriel saw the men in the service station and Muriel saw the men in the service stations in version first. The preposition fares in the service station and form part of the constitution and those head and word is man. The man in the services station and tell us the something about the man and whereas in the version 2 and the same prepositions and fares functions and separately as other constituted of the cloud and tell us where's the Muriel so the main evidences of for this analysis can be the showed and why such the operation as the coordinations and who WH questions cleftings and the passivizations and the frontings and tasters and to involving movings the stretch of language and around and the observings and it is the system syntactics and the behaviors and testing by the coordinations and involves and the addings are the coordinated and that the realized the same functions and only the stretch of languages and that the realize the same functions and can be the coordinated. It can be the seen and the different types of the cone size and required according to the functions in the services. Mural show the men in the service stations and the man and the woman in the shops. Mural show the men in the service station and in the shop. The WH questions and forms and is the appropriated responsible to be the different and for the two versions and who did the Murushi the man in the service station where did the Murushi the man and in the service station. cleftings, and by the means of it plus that clouds and highlightings are the clouds and constitution 30.2 and thus yield and two different result. It was the man in the service station and there the Muriel show. It was in the service stations that Muriel show the man. It was in the service station that Muriel show the man. WH cleftings and the gives the same result. The one mural show and was the man in the service station. Where the mural show, the man was in the service station. The form, the one and that is the used in this the constructions, and since the English does not admit who in this the contact and who the murals and show was the man in the service station. पेजी विशेषण एंड फोर टू केस लगा रखा पागल मगल है वो का गुड्डा मुड्डा होगा वो हैं बस अब जा रहे हैं It is not always the case and that is the sequence and response and equality and well to the all five. It is not always the case and that other sequences and response and equality as went to all the five and types of the test and certain the type of the units and may the resistant one or the more and of the operations and for the instead and frequently and adverse such as the often and the usually and model adverse like the probably and resist the clefting. And it is the often and usually the probably and that the murals and show the man in the service stations and the resulting in either sentence and that is the ungrammaticals and unlikes and some the language in English and the finites and verb and elements of other clause and normalies and resistant and frontings and show the murals and the man in the service station. The nevertheless and if two or the more of the operations and can be the carried out the satisfactories and we can be reasonably and shows that the sequences in the question is the constitute of the larger unit. We now turn to the despites and of the units and there the clause and the relationship holding between them. 2.3 grammatical units and the rank of units. The moving around of the bit of language either carried and out in the 2.2 and suggested in the Randolph and Quick's the famous similes and that the language is not other series of the word and strung together like the breed on other streaks and language is other patent and that is the certain and regulatories and can be the distinguished and thought out and every the linguistic manifestations and in the discourse either unit and will be the defined as any the sequences and that the constituted either semantics and whole and the which has either recognized and pattern and that is the repeated regularly in speech and the writings and for the instant the previously sentence is other units and containing the others unit and such as other recognized and patterns and in the speech and writings and sequences such as the defined as any and the repeated regularly and which also the occurs and in the same sentence and do not the constitute and unit and since they have no the semantics and whole and know the semantics and patterns and the following sequences and which components on the effects of other nuclear accidents and constitutes on the syntactics and the unit and which is the composed of the further units. The effect of the accident and are very the serious. In English it is the useful and to the recognize and for the structural unit and which can be the arranged in other relationship of the components and on what is called other rank and scale the clause one. In English, it is the useful and to the recognize and for the structurals and units and which can be the arranged in other relationship of the components. And on what is the called and other rank scales and clause second and clause first and clause first. The effect of the accident and are very the serious. The effect of the accident and are very the serious and word and a the space. The effect of the accident and are very the serious. More fame. Hey! Effect plus the plurals and realized by the morpheme and effect and s. For the initial stages of the analysis, it may be the helpful and to the mask of the boundaries. Bet. For the initial stage of the analysis, it may be the helpful and to the mask of the boundaries of each the units and why other symbols and such as the those adapted and to the examples adapted in the example and symbols and for the clause boundaries is either doubtable double vertical line and that for the groups and boundaries is other simple and the vertical line and that for word and the boundaries and is the simply other space as is the conventionally then used in the written language. The independence and clause is the equivalent and of the traditional and simple sentences and combination of clause. The boundaries and symbolized and by the are the illustrations in the 2, 4 and 1 and the treated. More the full is in chapter 7. The relationship between the unit is in the principles and as follow the lookings the downwards. Each units and the consistent of the one or the more units of the ranks and below it. Thus other clause and consist of one or the more groups other group and consist of one or the more words and other word consist of one or the more forms. For instance, and the weight consists of the one and class is one clause, and which the consist of. Hey. उठा पम ओरी पम और एक मोटा हाथी घूमने गया लकड़ी के झाल में जाके वो बचा दूसरे हाथी को इशारे से बुलाया इधर ला The relationship between the units and is in the principle and as follow the followings and downwards and each units the consist of one or the more and units and of the rank and below it. Thus the clause consist of one or the more and groups and consist of one or the more and words and the word consist of one or the more and more morphemes. And for the instance and weight consist of one and the clause and which the consist of the one groups and which consist of the one words and which the consist of the one morphones and more the extremely and we shall say that the elements of the structures structures of the real unit are the realized and by the unit of the rank and below. Looking the upwards and each units and the fulfill other functions in the units and above it and however as be the cell she in the 3, 6 and 3s and the मेरी पापा बिल्कुल looking upwards and each units and the fulfills a function in the unit and above it's the however as be the shall and she in the 3 6 and 3 and in the latest chapters and unit may be the embells embedded within the other units and such as in the clouds who live in the north and within the nominals groups pupils and who live in the north similarly and the prepositionals and phases of the accidents and is the embedded in the nominals group the affected of the accident and we shall be the concern in this the book and the namely and with the two units and cloud and groups the structures constituted of those units and will be the describes and in the latter section and together and with their the functions and meanings and classes of units and aid each ranks and of the grammatically unit and mentioned in the 2.3 and there are the various clause of units and clause of the classes of the clause either define fine and non-finite clouds aid the rank of the clouds are the first and the distinctions and is to be the made and is that and the between the define fine and non-fine cloud and as the cloud have as theirs and central elements and the verbal groups and there where the status there the status and defined and are not their status as the finite and non-finite dependent on the forms of the verb chosen finite verb and therefore
ले मैं खवाऊंगा रख जाता हूँ मैं खवा रहा ना
खा जाऊंगा
ले ले
tense is carried and not only by the texticles and the verb and but also be the defined and the operations and many is marked and by the modals and verb and which also the function as the operations and if the speaker wishes to the expression thus or the modalities and the togethers and with the persons and the numbers are defined forms and of the verb is chosen and therefore and such as is it and the logged and want and will and the stay and the clause is then and the cold either defined and the cloud and the financial cloud and for example in the following paragraphs all the verbs and therefore and all the clouds and marked 1 and 2 etc are defined. I had other farms in the Africa and ate the foot of the Nagong and hills. The equators and run across and thus the highlights are the 100 miles and to the north and the farms lay at and the altitude and of the over 6,000 feet in the daytimes and Yuda felt and that Yuda had got high up and near to the sun and but the early morning and the evenings and were the limpid and the restifuls and the rights and were cold in the verb and forms that does not the singles and the either and tense or the modalities and the verb and the clause are the classified as the non-finite and we known and the finite and non-finite clause the non-finite cloud and verb forms are the infinitives and the we eat and long and go and sometimes and called the bears and infinite the to infinite and to be and to eat and to look and to go and participants participating and forms and beings the eating looking going and the past participles and forms and symbolized in this the book as and been the eatens and logged gone Thus form are the shade and to be the known and the tension and known the finites and clouds are the illustrated and by the following example and they wants to hear are the caravans to initiative and clouds. Time help and here the carry her bags and up stairs and where the initiative clouds and we found the and the sittings in the gardens. Gardening participles and clouds. The initiative and were sent written by the hand and the participles clouds. The past participles types and is the illustrated and in the following extent and from the Severins and Carols in the Guardians. Has she been and the born and Tian and the cow and would have the spent and her the life and denied the freedoms and besides why other content and one slide once laughed and of the visitors and the separated and from her the mothers and the sunters and from one Jew to the another and artificially and inseminated and the treated as other community and the structure head plus the subject and plus part participant is and the alternatives and to the conditional clouds and with it 34.3 and if she had been and born the same forms answer for the both the defines and known the defines and status of many the English verbs and defined and the basis in it and the others verbs shares and can all the functions and both as other tense and past forms and as other non finite and the participles. Independence and dependent clause. Other further necessary restrictions to be the made and is that the between independent and dependent clause and the independent clause and the independent clause is the completes and in itself and that is it and does not forms part of the larger structures and whereas the dependent clause and dependent clause is the typically related to the independence clause and this is the illustrated in the following sections. They locked and up the house and the independence clause and before they the wants on the holiday. All grammatically independent clauses and are the defines and the dependence and clause and may be defined and not defined in the previous and the example and the undefined. The finite and dependence and clause and before they want on the holidays and can be the replaced and by other non-finite clause and before the going on holidays. And the dependent structure status of the non-finite clause is the signals by the forms and itself only the dependent and clause have the variations in the clause and structures and that the make for the different clause types and declaratives interrogatives imperatives and the exclamatives. Jack Flint is in the Hammer Smith and is his address and 20 the Finchley and Road and give me the Jack and telephones numbers and what are the large apartment he has. Finite dependent clause and seven kinds of the defines and defined dependent and clause are the illustrated in this the sections and along with the along with the three important and subtypes of the nominals and clause. The subordinated status and of other defines and the dependent and clause is the nominally sign and by means of the subordinated and the conjunctions and subordinated and such as when and if before as soon as in the circumstance tears and clause as in one the blows and also the 35.2 and or by the relatively and such as which and that in the relatives clause as in the two and as soon as and she goes home and the switches on the televisions and Pock took one of the red apples and that his the wives and had the throat the broad and that the meanings and nominals clause and fulfill the functionals of the subjected object and complemented in the clause and structure in other sentence and such as he show that the bottles and where the empty the clause and the bottles and where the empty is the embedded and as other constituted. In this the case as the object of the superannuated and clause he show the ten. The part without the emblazed and clause is sometimes and called the matrix clause. The main type of the nominals and clause are the that and clause on 3 and the WH nominal relatives and clause on 4 and the dependence and WH interrogatives clause on 4 and 5. The dependented and the exclamatives. 6 is other furthers and types of the WH cloud, and he showed that the bottles and were the empty and that the clouds and what I don't understand is why and you have come here and nominals clause and nominals clause plus dependent WH interrogatives and I will the ask and where's the narrative nearest underground stations is dependent WH interrogative and she said how the comfortable it was the dependent exclamative clause embedded and clause and are the discussed and are the illustrated in the chapter 2 and 3 and comparative clause occurs the following the comparatives comparative and clause forms of the objectives and adverb and the comparative clause and introduced by then and provides the basic of the compositions. The results are much better than we expected. Sedimentary units, sedimentary units, supplementive units, and are not the ingredient and not the mains and clause and as the embased and units are. But add the supplementary information and they are the subordinated but not the embased, and they are set off from the main and clause and by the commas or by other das and has and have their own intonations and the counters, and here is an example of other suprematives non-finite and clause and the rescues in the 1970s formed the pattern of the highly constructed and the house and was the moved to new and the side and the donated and to the nationals and the trust. It is bigger in the disclosed dialogues weekend the often and come across the supplementative and that are the free steerings and despite their the subordinated and form as in the following italics and example in chapter 5 7 and 10 the large sign doesn't seems to be the available which is a pretty not only in the class is clause and but others the units and can have the status of the supplementative and 49.2 a the subordinary type. The subordinary type of clause is the verbless and clause, and this is other clause and which lakes and verbs and often other subject. Also, the nominated verb is the typically forms and be and is the recoverables and forms the situationals and or the linguistic contact and as in the books and you ticket bell in advance and whenever's possibles and whatever whenever's and it is the possibles and the following extract and following the alien and Morgans and the descent of the woman's illustrated and this type very well. Hey! मुझे नहीं खा गंदी 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 Book your ticket well in the advance and the whatevers and positions and whenevers, and it is the possibles and the followings and the extreme from the Elaine Morgans and the descent of the woman illustrations and this type very well, and the man apes and the monkeys and can all be the observed and to carry out and when in the pen and the flush and when the engaged and yarn when and the tired and heard and glare and when the defend and green and when the ticket when the trickled and trembles and when the affair and embraced and when the affective need and where there's the teeth and when the hostiles and rest there the envoy and when the surprise and the turn the hair the hidden away when the affair. We shall also the classified as the verbless clause and many the regulation construction and such as the followings and W as the question and without other defined verb and the adjusted and with the forms of with the force of other commands and sometimes and on other vocatives and the ellipted and interrogatives and the exclamatives and clause. Proverb of the types. And why not sell yours the car and get other new cars and hands off and into the shelters and every day. Everybody's unsure. Are you sure? And fantastic. That is the fantastic and out of the side and out of mind. And finally, and we shall call the abbreviated and clause and those and such as can you and I want and has she and she consist of the subjects and the finite or operators above alone. Along with the rest of the clause and the ellipted because it is known as thus the clause typically occurs as the responsible in the conservation and exchange and as the tax but can also the express and such the species and act as the reprimanded and must you given and the appropriated social contact. Classes of groups. Classes of the groups are the classified according to the class and of the word and the operating as the means or the head and element and headed by other nouns and the adjectives and the adverb and or the verb and the respectively and be can the identified the following classes and nominals groups and engine verbals groups and the busy and adjectivals groups and the adjectival groups and adverbs behaviors groups and film. Wonderful film by the Fellinis and well written and goods and quite good at the language and frequently very frequently indeed. Units such as thus the centers and round on men and the elements and which the typically and cannot be the omitted and the further modes. The main element can the replaced the whole structures and film written and good and the frequently and can have the same and the syntactics and the functions as the whole groups of the such of which and the each is had and or in The cases of the written and as the lexicals and buffs and by the contract the units and formed by the prepositions and its components such as on the floors and is the rather different the prepositions and can't the functionals alongs and as other units. Both elements are the obligatories and this the units and will the therefore and we call the prepositionals and phases pp. The classes of the word. The word are the classified and the grammatically and according to the traditional and the terminologies and wheres which the includes a noun and words the adjective adverb and the prepositions and pronouns articles and the conjunctions and thus parts of the speech are the divided into two main clauses, the opens and the close, and the opens classes are those and that the freely and admit and new the members and into the vocabulary and they the comprises and noun and verb the adjective and the adverb. The close classes and the prepositions and pronouns and the articles and do not the easily admit and knew the members and prepositions and have the gradually expanded there the memberships and somewhat and by the admittings and participles and such as the includings the concernings and but the remainings and clause are very the resistances and to the introductions of the new items and this has been noticeable and in the recent years and when attempt have been and to the find gender neutrality. 2.44 and the classes of the morphemes. What are the made up of the morphemas and we shall the consider the morphemas to be and the attract and the categories that has the IELTS are the lexical. Lexicals or other grammaticalies and meanings and we have the already indicators in the 2.3 and that are the words words and such as the effect and can be the considered other follow formed and the forms the lexicals and morphemes and affected plus the plurals and morphones. Thus the abstract and categories are the realized by the morphomes and such as the affected and the s and the left and the actual segmented of the writers and the spoken English respectively since the study of the word and the morphones and text take us about of the syntax and into the morphologies and the scopes of this the book and does not allow for the further treatment of thus the units. Thank you guys, this session will be closed. अब नेक्स्ट सेशन में मिलते हैं और बहुत सारी इसके साथ में. थैंक यू गाइस, हैव अ गुड डे, बाय बाय, विश यू ऑल द बेस्ट.